Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to start our first session here. And thank you very much for joining us here. And I hope you'll be inspired by the time we finish this session. Our topic today is accelerating a just transition to net zero emissions globally. And I could even say that if we don't do that, some of the work we are doing everywhere else is going to fail, because we will begin to cross the boundaries that we are now already seeing happening in the marketplace. Why accelerate? I think you heard one of the reasons, and that is because in terms of the NDC commitments that we have all made in 2015, we are nearly 80, in the case of 85% of our SDGs, we are off target. So we need to accelerate, we need to catch up. Number two, if you look at the stocktake report, it says that we will need to reduce our current commitments by 43% if we are going to make sure that we end up with a 1.50 centigrade by 2030. Last but not least, halting the massive subsidies for fossil fuels. Roughly $2.9 trillion was spent on fossil fuel subsidies. And half the time we are asking the question, so how do we fund the acceleration? How do we fund the transition to renewables? I think one of those answers are in terms of managing that subsidy and transferring that subsidy for us to move forward faster. If we are to move forward faster, every single company represented in this room needs to make a genuine commitment with a renewable energy transition plan that is aggressive and that gets us to at least 80% renewable energy driven by 2030. And that is going to be crucial for us to keep temperatures below the 1.5 degree centigrade mark. Today, I can tell you that there are companies who are already moving forward faster and doing some amazing work. There are many companies led by 21st century leaders who are totally committed to the science and driving businesses. In fact, there are two companies that we are going to be listening to today. One is Iberdrola from Spain, and the other one is Shiseido. And one of the other amazing companies that have made this transition in terms of from a fossil fuel company to a renewable energy company is Ørsted. And these are three amazing companies that we could look forward to and look at in terms of inspiration. So with those few words of introduction, let us move to looking at the Forward Faster initiative. Yep. In terms of the Forward Faster initiative, the two targets that are relevant to our subject today are the science-based targeting in terms of the climate action targets. Now, why is science-based so important? If one looks at 1987, when we first had the Brundtland report, which very, very clearly communicated to every single one of us the challenges of the climate emergency. And now, moving forward to 2023, that's 36 years since the Brundtland report was first formulated and presented to all of us. How come we are now in 2023 and only 35% of our energy sources are driven by renewable energy and 65% yet in the fossil fuel sector? That has to change dramatically in the next 7 years. And I hope today's session of accelerating that transition to net zero will be the key topic that all of you take back. And if at the end of today, every one of you, as you go back to your companies, are inspired to accelerate the net zero achievement, then we would have achieved something today. Our first speaker today, I would like to introduce Aisha Siddiqa. She's a member of the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, and also is a research scholar at the New York University. So without further ado, I want to invite Aisha to inspire us to move towards accelerating our net zero targets.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. I am called Aisha Siddiqa. I come from a tribal community in northern Pakistan, and I'm here today to share a story with you guys. Many, many years ago, the first chiefs of this continent came together to ask the question, how do we govern our people? To answer this question, they looked at the world around them, and what they saw was creation, life, animals, the land and the sea, the intricate weave of what we call life. They recognized that as children of nature, they only needed to observe the world around them to understand how to govern. So they agreed, nature will teach us how to write our laws. The first principle they observed and understood was that in nature there is a balance between male and female. When it is unbalanced, when there are too many male deer, for example, and few female deer, when there are too many male trees and few female trees, nature is disturbed. So they agreed that on their council of chiefs, they would have an equal amount of seats for both men and women. And this would allow them to have balance in their laws and in their society. Then they asked themselves, what do the beings in nature give priority to? What is the center of their care? And they discovered it was a love for their children, their young. So the chiefs, as they made their various councils among themselves to write the different laws, created a fire in the middle of their gathering and called it the Children's Fire. They acknowledged it as a pledge that no action, no law, no power of any kind would act in such a way that it would harm the children. Now I see many executives in front of me, business people, people that are working to make this planet a more habitable place. My question to you are we acting in a way that protects our children? It's a question. We are in the eye of the storm now. The crises we once feared are accumulating, and they're feeding off of each other. The peasants, the poor people, the indigenous people are paying in life for the wealthy and privileged to ignore the issue at hand. There comes a time when you repeat the mistakes of history so often and at such a scale, you unlock a portal of grave mistakes. How many times were we warned that the climate crisis is a kind of monster we cannot compete with if we don't start acting? In the context of Pakistan, where I come from, and in the rest of the Middle East, which I would argue are some of the most looted and impacted regions on Earth, which have paid in blood for fossil fuel, are now suffering multiple crises. Last year, my country experienced a flood of dire proportion. 33 million people were displaced. Of those 33 million, 16 million were children. It does not take a political scientist to understand that the environmental disasters of such scale lead to social and political upheaval. They impact girls and children. They impact economies. They impact welfare. They impact health. And worst of all, and maybe most pertinent, during times of natural disaster, the market-based economy collapses. And what we are left with are the true resources. That is why, more than ever before, we need people to come together. We need to unify across borders and regions, across cultures and languages. We really need to fix what we have broken. And to do this, every company, irrespective of its size, must recognize the special responsibility of guardianship that comes from the privilege of making profits, to be good planetary stewards. It involves taking deep decarbonization and implementing credible, measurable plans towards net zero future by 2050. It involves shifting to a circular economy and protecting nature and reversing current declines in global biodiversity so that species and ecosystems can recover and thrive. It involves protecting people. It is a journey requiring a careful and holistic approach, ensuring that mitigation strategies don't inadvertently widen the chasm of inequities that actively bridge them. I think we are all aware of the issue at hand, and I also believe that we are all aware of the solutions we have to resolve this issue. My last statement for you guys is that we must be brave enough to put them into action. Thank you so much.
Very much, Aisha. Thank you for those key words. And sustainable development, development that meets the needs of the present without jeopardizing the needs of future. And here is an example of the future that we are looking at. I want to do something a little out of the ordinary. And for those of you who have children, please write the name of your son or your daughter and how old he or she will be in 2030. And we will get back to that at the end of the session. With that, I want to introduce our first presenter for today, Ms. Akiko Nakamura, who is the Vice President of Sustainability at Shiseido. She began her career at Shiseido in global marketing and made the transition into corporate strategy and now drives their sustainability strategy. Let me invite Akiko to present to us today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Akiko Nakamura, the Vice President of Sustainability at Shiseido. I'm honored to be here with you. Today, I'd like to share with you our commitment, challenges, and action toward net zero. And as a beginning, at the start, let me give you a brief introduction of Shiseido. The Shiseido is a beauty company which generates around the 70 billion sales in 120 countries and regions. Our company names come from the Chinese classic text I Ching. That means praise the virtues of the earth, which nurtures new life and brings forth significant values. We are committed to creating new value for the society, and our ways of producing products is based on our Japanese thought, which is respect for the nature and living thing. By the way, the Shiseido is celebrated its 150th anniversary last year, and we are now moving forward for the next 100 years. We have our Shiseido philosophy composed of our mission and DNAs and principles, and our mission that are including our purpose is beauty innovations for a better world. We believe beauty can have the power to inspire hope, empowers happiness, and contribute to the world of wellness for all living things. Through the power of beauty, we strive to create a more sustainable world where everyone can enjoy their life with fulfillment in its enriched mind. We regard people as the key, so our approach is to touch the heart of people, and with our beauty product, services, and communication, including the education, toward solving the social and environmental issues. As for the climate change, here is a roadmap toward net zero 2050. And I would like to share with you our major challenges we overcame. Setting the long-term target and change the mindset of our stakeholder by leveraging Scope 3. And actually, we have 4 targets for CO2 emissions. The first one set in 2020, which is carbon neutrality. But at that time, the scope is only Scope 1 and 2, and including the offsetting of carbon credit. However, it was a big challenge for us because it is our first time to set such a long target at the business as a corporate in total globally. So under the VUCA situation, it is hard to set up the long-term targets. Moreover, in this area, there is no clear solution available, and there is a lot of uncertainty. So it was not smooth to have an alignment. However, our CEO said at our 150th anniversary that we aim to remain vital and be trusted for coming next 100 years. So that encouraging us to set a target for the longer term globally. After the discussion based on the cautious assumption and productive advice from the external advisors, we disclosed the targets for climate change. And after IPCC 6 report and COP26, we found out that setting a target on the Scope 1 and 2 and without science-based is not enough. So that time, we quite aware of the importance of setting the target SBTI, science-based, and have a huge discussion. We also have the science-based target for the Scope 1 and 2 and 3. Now, the Scope 1 and 2 target with science-based is incorporated into our long-term incentive and also KPI for our sustainability-linked bond. All employees are quite aware of the importance of having their CO2 emission reduction target through the business. Second challenge was changing the mindset of the stakeholders by leveraging Scope 3. And as you can see, our Scope 3 is accounting for around more than 90%. So meaning we cannot reduce the CO2 emission by ourselves. So, however, like at the time, like our internal stakeholders, I think that it is more the matter for the production site offices. So we need to keep sharing the information that Scope 3 matters for every single step of the value chain, and it matters to our business in the longer term. At the beginning, a bit difficult to get alignment, but keep discussion and sharing information and debate a lot about like what kind of target we should have. Finally, we get the alignment with the science-based with Scope 3. And especially at our Scope 3, our procurement is the key, and that is like links. That is really important to take into consideration on just transition. So that part we are start discussing about that. Since like the target is set in long term, but like let me quickly share with you about like some concrete actions we are taking an action relating to reducing the CO2 emissions. And by the way, we're starting from the Scope 1 and 2, switching to the renewable electricity. Last year, Shiseido achieved to become the 100% renewable electricity usage at all factories globally. And since like it is also like setting the long-term incentive for the non-production site, now we are accelerating the switching to the renewable electricity globally. In terms of Scope 3, we are developing the products which is sustainable by replacing the material to be more low carbon footprint, and also leveraging the refilling packaging for aiming to reduce the CO2 emission and plastics. We also regard the importance of disclosing our commitment and progresses with transparency. So we disclose our commitment with progresses at our corporate report, such as sustainability report, integrated report, and CDP and TCFD. As a result, we are named in the CDP A list last year. That's also encouraging us to move forward. Climate change involves risks and so many challenges, but in the meantime, we regard it as an opportunity. We are now changing the way of producing products and conducted a lot of like revision and improvement through the value chain. And it has to be more equity-oriented and more sustainable with transparency. We do monitoring our progresses and making necessary correction if our transformation to the zero carbon society. Thank you for the listening.
Thank you very much, Akiko. What we're going to do now is to give you a chance to engage with Akiko's presentation in terms of any clarifications you have. And we are going to go into polling. Congratulations, Akiko, on getting to 100% renewable energy driven for all the electricity and the targets that you are setting. In the world of consumer goods and beauty care, I think Shiseido really shines out with companies like L'Oreal and Unilever. Okay, so let's just take a seat till the polling is completed, and then we'll go into the questions that you would like to clarify in terms of Akiko. There are a couple of questions coming up. Quite a few interesting questions are coming up for Akiko. give a couple of minutes room for the polling to finish. Akiko, meanwhile, you could tell us what made you move from global marketing into global sustainability.
Yeah, actually, like I've been in marketing and moved to the corporate strategy and see like how the company transform in the future and found out sustainability is the next growth driver for the company. So I raised a hand and said like I want to take an action on sustainability and move to the sustainability function to take the lead for setting those kind of long-term target.
Excellent. I think the key word is that sustainability is going to be the growth driver. And I think one of the key paradigm shifts we all need to make is, as opposed to saying sustainability as a cost, we should be looking at sustainability as an investment for us to move in terms of making it a growth driver. And the moment sustainability is incorporated into your corporate strategy, that will really happen. And here's a good example of how they do that. Okay, so we've come to the end of the poll, and our first question to Akiko is, how does one work towards a more sustainable supply chain? What are your thoughts on that, Akiko?
Yeah, thank you so much for the polling first of all. And like this part is really key for our company. Like since like our 90% of our scopes, our CO2 emissions coming from scope 3, and definitely that's the area that we need to heavily collaborate with supply chain suppliers. And I think for the achievement, just transition is very important, and we have to be taking an action on that. And in order to do that, traceability is the key. We procure a lot of the products, ingredients, and packaging from the suppliers, and we need to track like where it comes from, because through the value chain and for the procurement, we see that there may be a possibility to have the land use issues or human rights issues. At this moment, like we are start taking an action to replace from the raw material to be more fossil oriented to the bio-based, and that means like we need to be tracking more seriously. And we are taking the CDP supplier program and suppliers audit, and to track where this product and the raw materials are sourced and how it will be procured. At this moment, that program is only by company basis, but at the end of the day, in the longer term, we have to track by raw materials or material basis.
Excellent. I think we'll have just one more question, and I think this is a question that is going to resonate with every one of you. How do we convince the executive management and investors that sustainable business plans are good for the bottom line? How do we get the board on track? How do we get our C-suite managers and C-suite heads understanding that sustainability is good for business? And how would you respond to that, Akiko?
First of all, I keep saying that sustainability is not a risk; it is an opportunity. And like our manufacturer, like us like a manufacturer, needs to have a look at how consumers think and behave about our products and companies' behaviors. And consumers' behaviors are changing. Purchase intentions are also changing, especially among Gen Z. The more they are more interested in what's good companies doing, and they are more have expectation toward the company to take action on sustainability through our products or services. So it means an opportunity. So the other party try to convince them. In terms of however, it's also investment at the first stage. So we need to start from not the bigger scale. It's starting with the pilot phase and do a lot of things and try and other things, and try to optimize how it goes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Akiko. Let's give her a round of applause. Okay, it is now my privilege to invite our next presenter. When one looks at the world of renewable energy, there are one or two companies that shine out. and are clearly leading the charge in terms of renewable energy transformation and acceleration, therefore, being a key element of the acceleration to net zero. Our next speaker is Mr. Gonzalo Sáenz de Mera. He is the Global Director of Climate Change and Alliances at Iberdrola. And I must say that recently I was reading of some amazing work that Iberdrola is doing in the Paris Underground. I don't know how many of you have noticed this, but I will not steal any thunder from Gonzalo. Gonzalo, the stage is yours.
Hi, good morning to all of you, and thank you to Global Compact for organizing such an interesting forum. It's a real pleasure to be here with you in New York in this bright and fresh morning. We are suffering several crises at the same time. The climate crisis, the energy crisis, social crisis, economic crisis. The origin of all this crisis is the same, an energy model based on fossil fuels. And the solution is also the same, moving from fossil fuels to renewables. My message here today is that thanks to the revolution of clean technologies in the last 10-15 years, this transition to a almost fully renewable electricity system and a sustainable energy system is possible. And this is good news if we want to avoid the worst scenarios of climate change that, I agree with Asisha, are the poorest people of society and the poorest country will suffer. And this energy transition that will be essential to avoid the climate crisis is also a huge opportunity in terms of economic development, reducing energy bills, because renewables today are the cheapest way to produce electricity all around the world. It will be good for air quality, health, it will be good for jobs. So, Iberdrola, we are an energy company fully committed with this energy transition of moving to 100% renewable energy system. And we are fully, actually, it's the main pillar of our strategy. And we want to do it in a way that is good for all, not just for climate, but also for people, especially for local communities, and good for nature, good for biodiversity. And we want, and we need to do this in collaboration with all. The challenge is so huge that we cannot do it alone. So we need a radical collaboration to change all these things. So our strategy has this climate and just transition strategy has just 4 pillars: ambition, action, advocacy, and accountability. In terms of ambition, we were at first, because we have been investing in renewables for the last 20 years. I think just in renewables and innovative solutions. However, last year we presented new climate objectives, and those objectives are the most ambitious of the energy sector. We are going for net zero by 2030 for scopes 1 and 2, so no emissions from our energy production, and 0 emissions before 2040 for all the scopes, including scope 3. And how are we going to do that? 100% renewables and 100% suppliers and 100% clients, working with our suppliers and working with our consumers to provide them with clean and cheap solutions. Our investment plan, we are going to invest 47 billion euros in the next 2 years and 75 billion euros before 2030. And those investments are just in renewables, networks, and green hydrogen that is a complement to renewables. Second element is action. Action in terms of people. And we are moving for this traditional fair transition for the energy sector, that when you close a coal facility, you have to provide solutions to workers. We are doing that. But apart from that, we are opening this concept to include just transition in the development of renewables. Renewables be good for people, for local people, and not just renewables. All the industry that is needed to develop renewables, and all the industry that is moving from fossil fuels to renewables. So we are working a lot. For instance, we have created a photovoltaic module for manufacturing plant in Spain to develop all this value chain. We have a school of electricians for women in Brazil, a citizens innovation platform in Spain. And for me, the most important element is this Convive program. We want to develop renewables in a way that is good for local communities and good for biodiversity. And we are changing the way our relationship with local communities. We are co-creating solutions with them. And it's really a profitable approach, because it's easier. If we want to change the whole energy system, we need social support. We need social license. And for this, we have to recognize that we have to change the way we do things. And the last thing we have developed, we are working with UNICEF, because this is a huge opportunity for young vulnerable people. In Spain, but we are also working in Brazil, we are also working in Somalia, because there are huge opportunities out there. And we are skilling these people. We are providing them with jobs, with hires, and with Iberdrola. And we think it's a very interesting alliance, and we want to share it with you. So if you are interested, please talk to me. The next point is advocacy. I mean, what we do is important, but if we want to change things, we need policies. Policies is what really changes the behavior of firms and the behavior of society. And for that, we are lobbying governments, we are lobbying international organizations through our alliances. We are pushing, this idea that we need a fair transition, a clean and fair transition. And there are huge opportunities. We are signing all the pledges. We are launching initiatives. For instance, we are very active with a very active involvement in the global agenda. We will develop, we are organizing already big events for the COP 28 in Emirates. And the last thing is accountability. And in terms of accountability, is really important, is our annual report. Internal collaboration, this is basic. If you want to do this, you need the involvement of all parts of the firm. We are very lucky because our CEO is clear about this strategy. He's the leader, but we have to work with others, not just within the sustainability department. And the final thing is that we are really fans of the Integrity Matters report of the United Nations. We were the first team to present a climate action plan aligned with this Integrity Matters report that, of course, one of its main elements is just transition. Climate change pledges should be good for climate, but also include the just transition message. My last message: we need to accelerate the energy transition. We need to put short-term objectives, 2025 and 2030. We need to move to a just transition, and we have to do it with people. We need to do it with others to guarantee a future for the next generations. Because, this is my message, there is no sustainable economy without a sustainable and fair environment. So it's urgent, it's necessary, and it's possible. Thank you very much.
much, Gonzalo, for that very hopeful message in terms of just transition. I think the rock stars of the future will be the renewable energy companies. And I think we have the Iberdrolas, the Oystads. They are going to be the champions in the future. They are the ones who are going to take us forward. In fact, the UN Secretary General recently said, the era of global warming is over. We are now in the era of global boiling. Now, if everybody understands that global boiling is going to lead to catastrophic extreme weather incidents that are going to be wiping out a good part of the economies of the world, isn't it better for us to make the transition? So, once again, we have some questions coming up for you. Let's take a seat to that.
What you mentioned is the energy companies are going to be leaders, but we need to involve, I don't know if there are going to be leaders, there are going to be an important part, but the point is that all industry, all economy has to move into this direction. So I think we have to work together because we have part of the solution, but now the key is the demand. You know that?
Absolutely. I think very good point. I think you're not the globe, you're also the head of alliances.
Yes.
So alliances working together, I think is going to be the future. And one company that has really impressed me, I mean, Iberdrola is definitely one, and another is the company Ørsted in Denmark. It was an oil and gas company in 2009. Today, it's 100% renewable energy company. The renewable energy companies are going to be the game changers in the future. So let's look at the question that you have been asked. In social dialogue with workers, governments, and local communities. Would you like to make some comments on that?
I mean, that is for us is essential because this revolution, this energy revolution is creating opportunities for all. So we are working with trade unions, we are working with governments, and we are working with local communities to take advantage of the job opportunities in terms of this energy transition in a positive way, because understanding that this will create jobs in terms in general. However, there will be losers. There will be certain sectors, certain regions, certain citizens that will lose from this transition. So we have to work with them to allow them to adapt to this new situation. For that reason, upskilling and reskilling is essential because we need to adapt workers from fossil fuel sectors to renewable sector. And we are working a lot with universities, with trade unions, with schools to really, and actually, there is a lack of workers with the necessary skill to develop this energy transition in many countries. So it's a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think the era of green collar jobs is going to come to forth, where the renewable energy companies are going to be attracting the best and the brightest young people in the world to green collar positions. And that is going to be the future that we are looking at. And companies like Iberdrola are making that happen. Okay, so I think we have time for maybe one more question before we work. Any key message that you picked up when you did the Just Transition training program for Iberdrola? Any key message you would like to leave with our audience?
The key message is that we need to work with other industries. That's the main message. And we need to understand the needs of other industries to really work together, because other industries, you need clean energy, but you need cheap energy at the same time, and you need opportunities. So let's work together with energy companies to find solutions, because these hard-to-abate sectors, heavy industries, steel and so on, what we are seeing is that they are moving into this direction, not for climate and for nature, but for competitiveness, because these clean solutions are a way to reduce the energy bills, to improve energy independence, and to create new jobs. And this is good for all, but I think we have to have more conversations and more dialogue, sectoral conversations, for instance, with the beauty sector. I think we can work together. We can help to provide 100% energy, but you can provide the services, beauty services for Spanish, it will be great, no? No,
That's a good one.
No, but really, this idea of working together between different sectors.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to invite Akiko also back on stage now. We'll now go into a final Q&A, and any pressing questions that any one of you have for either of them, you could ask and send the questions to the Akiko, you're ready for a few questions from our audience? And while we wait, let's just give a few minutes for the questions to come. And while we wait, we could probably spend a minute talking about the future of the renewable energy business. I mean, Iberdrola is driving lots of the innovation in this area. And I mean, now we have the perovskite solar panels that are coming up, the amazing developments in battery technology, and these are all absolutely signs for the future. And the time will come when the fossil fuel companies will have to take a back seat, because the renewable energy companies are basically going to be the solution. Okay, so we have two anonymous questions here. I'll start with the lady, Akiko. How is Shiseido balancing the long-term financial investments requirements for net zero with the pressure from shareholders for financial results in the short term? I mean, isn't that a challenge for all of us? How do we balance the achievement, invest for the strategic term while also delivering results in the short to medium term? So I'm very looking forward to hearing Akiko's answer to this.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, it is the toughest question I need to answer. And frankly speaking, in terms of this, this under the VUCA situation, and also especially the COVID-19 impact, of course, we have to be really committed to the short-term result. And so that is the kind of a thing that we need to commit. But in the meantime, we also need to secure the budget for the longer term thing. It's more like a total story. We are having a dialogue with investors and tries to get understanding from them. So it's more like a dialogue. Don't just show and done things. To keep talking. So that is the thing we are really aiming to do that and doing currently.
Great. Gonzalo, you have an excellent question. What would be your advice to sustainability leaders working in other high-emitting sectors for ambitious action on the just transition? I mean, I must make one comment just before you answer that. I don't think in the 21st century we can leave sustainability only to sustainability managers and sustainability people. Everyone in the company needs to be a sustainability person. There's no way this can be, left with one group, right? But please give us your answer to that question.
My answer is that this is an industrial revolution. I mean, this is already affecting some sectors. For instance, the electricity sector, transport sector, but this will affect all sectors in the next decade. And these are opportunities out there. And what I see is that there is a global competition to take advantage of this opportunity. Global competition between countries. So we have the United States with their IRA, China is investing in clean technologies, Europe, the Green Deal. Those are climate policies, but in reality, those are industrial policies. And there is competition between firms, between regions. And the point is that this is unstoppable. And the earlier you move, the better advantage and better benefits in terms of economic and social benefits you will have. So the first movers will have the gains from this. So you have to understand that this is not just environment, that this is competitiveness, that this is industrial development, and then the first movers are gonna be the ones that are gonna take advantage of the opportunities. And be careful, because if you don't take advantage of the opportunities, you have risks. So, and this idea of risk is important for managers to understand that this is opportunities, but also risks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So with that, I must, let's give a round of applause to these two champions of accelerating towards net zero. You could take a seat. I will. Okay, I think we've nearly come to the very end of our session today. Our objective was to inspire every one of you to show that whether it is a cosmetics company or whether it's a renewable energy company, or for that matter, whatever company you're in, that you have to be part of the solution. And gone are the times when we can keep kicking the can down the road in terms of targets. From the year 2000, we have been postponing the targets to move to renewable energy to 2030, and now again we are talking about postponing it further. If you postpone moving to net zero by 2030, 2035, I think we will then have jeopardized the lives of many people. It is my great privilege to invite our next speaker to make the closing remarks. And he is none other than Mr. Ani Dasgupta of World Resources Institute, which is a key player in giving us information that needs to be acted upon. Thank you very much, Ani, for joining us today. Thank you.
Hey everyone, just before lunch, perfect time to speak. You're in the Leader Summit, so I thought I'll take an opportunity to talk about a minute, just the two fantastic leaders that you just heard from, what we're learning about leadership in this moment from businesses. Just like the two stories we just said, what are we learning? I had a environmental organization, the World Resources Institute, which is, the reason I mention it, we actually believed businesses were part of the solution for more than 20 years. Because if businesses don't change and lead, there is no chance to get to 1.5 degrees. The world's economy last year was $100 trillion, $65 to $70 trillion decisions were made by businesses. So you can see just the math. If businesses don't do differently, there is no way to get to. That's why our interest. We are an organization that set up GHG protocol. The two organizations that you just heard, they measure their carbon using that protocol. My organization with others set up the SBTI that you heard Akiko talk about. They are a member of it. That allows companies like Akiko's get an external validation of where their net zero plan makes sense or not. I'm also part of Global Compact. So all this, the reason I say all this is it allows me to actually meet with leaders like that, that you just met, many personally in our organization. And I just want to share with you what is common about leadership in this space. What does it look like? It changes, right? As the world changes, leadership changes. You know, on 8th of September, UN published a very important report called Global Stocktake, which basically took a measure, how is the world doing on the climate journey? In the Paris, we came together, made a very ambitious, phenomenal agreement to get the world less than 2 degrees to 1.5 degrees. And it says to do that, we need to get to net zero by 2050. So this was a report to look at all the countries doing and how we are doing. This is the first time such a report was published. As you can well imagine, that report said we're not doing very well. Across the board, we're actually not doing very well. And you will hear a lot in this week about how we're not doing very well. And that's true. I mean, there's no avoiding the fact. But the report also had something very interesting to say about the path forward. And I just want to focus on what they said. They said the couple of sectors, we need to actually make it clear to us what those sectors are. Energy, you just heard. Agriculture, transportation, consumer goods, you just heard. it also said the other thing, that it's not for us to, with the time that's left for us, that we can't just do incremental changes. We actually have to do transformational changes. They use the word system change, that we need to change the system of energy. You just heard Gonzalo talk about it. We have to change the system of agriculture. So that is the path forward. It's not single solution. How do we bring an ecosystem of change that needs to happen? And this is where the leadership question comes up. So if you just think about that for a moment, there are very specific sectors that we need to make progress in a system change way. What does leadership would mean? I just want to actually now, which was not true 5 years back, there is a whole series of companies that are making a lot of effort to get to net zero. And what I share with you is what we're learning engaging with this company. There are about 4,000 companies that are part of SBTI system. One thing we are learning very much, is that companies, the commitment is not enough. Just making a commitment is not enough. You have to take action today, action tomorrow, action day after. You have to make a long-term plan, but you have to start acting now. Those are the companies that are moving forward. And the second, you need to be accountable to your action. You saw both these, Gonzalo and Akiko, talk about how important the accountability story is, so that the public at large is confident that we are moving together in an accountable way. Because there's a lot of noise about greenwashing in the sector. So it's great to be accountable. But I must point out, our biggest observation is, I think you've heard from both of them, is that companies that see net zero transition as something the ESG department will do, and that's it, we'll move forward, are not actually in the forefront. Companies that see this as a business transformation opportunity, a business change, and actually central to the path to competitiveness and profitability, those are the companies. And you heard Gonzalo talk about that. Actually, I just want to underline this, that companies that are embracing, how do we do business differently? One of my most favorite stories, talking to head of PepsiCo, that they are actually who sell liquid across. They're thinking about how actually to sell something different that's not liquid. So much less needs to be transported and much less plastic is used, not have plastic at all. Things like that. The second thing is to have, you heard from both these companies, and this is true for every company, the companies are serious. Scope 1 and 2, they actually figure out relatively in the first few years. It's the scope 3 and how they deal with it is where the magic is, where the most difficulty is for companies, but the most place for innovation is. And you, for Akiko, just how she and her company is dealing with scope 3. This is scope 3 is the material that you buy as a company and what happens to your product after it leaves your factory or company's door. How people use it, what do they do with it. This is a space where most innovation happening. And I want to point out this idea of just transition that you hear a lot. One of the part of just transition is creating just employment for people in the community, people across. And 7 out of 10 employment in the world is created by SMEs. And the just transition value chain actually has a lot of SMEs. So how companies deal and engage with that. And Gonzalo made a fantastic point about not just the companies that directly relate to their own firm, but the community at large is where the success is, where the innovation is. And the last point I'm going to make is what we're learning is companies have to engage in policy. Because if this is what you heard from Gonzalo, is that if policies are not changed towards helping companies like the two that you heard actually thrive, you won't have a playing field, you don't have more people coming. So it seems to me the biggest promise that we're seeing is really a partnership between government, companies that are leaders, and civil society. In the case of Gonzalo, had a very good, fantastic point how to engage. Because we need civil society support to do the magical thing we need to do to make accelerated change. That is where the promise is. That is what the leading companies are doing. What is also true to us is what we're finding, that this change is not only good for planet, as both Akiko and Gonzalo pointed out, it is actually good for business. But the transition is good for business, but the transition is hard. It's hard for every company. And that's why you're here. That is where leadership is needed. That transition, how to manage the transition successfully, your company, for people in your value chain, of course, for your customers. with that, I hope you will embrace the transition that's needed and be the leaders. And otherwise, you won't be here. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ani, and thank you very much to our two presenters. I started off by saying, write down the names of your children and how old they will be when they get to 30 years in 2030. And I want to end today's session by making an impassionate call to every one of you to take a decisive action towards accelerating towards net zero in terms of your personal sphere of influence. Because like was said by Ani today, it's about doing things now. It's not about kicking the can down and saying, let's do it in 2050, 2070. Now's the time to act, and now's the time to move forward. Thank you very much. Enjoy lunch, and see you at the lunch room. Thank you very much.